I'm always asked about how to get started in oil paints. So I finally put together this video to share all my top tips. Firstly, make sure you're patient with yourself. Give yourself the time to
Oil paint, the medium of the masters. Artists tend to use oil paints over watercolors or acrylics because of its thick texture, rich colors, and endless possibilities. Now, oil paint does tend to be more expensive than acrylic and watercolors, but there are some companies out there like Winsor & Newton who have made decent quality oil paints at an affordable price. So what colors do you need? I suggest the primaries in white. That's red, blue, yellow, and white. Now, when you go to the store, you'll see there's a wide range of smooth. It's also very store-bought acrylic, decent quality, and a great cheap look. I suggest picking, move the paint around, and
okay, I know all of that.
In this video, I'm going to show you how if you can get a hold of painting this apple here, you can paint anything. Now, even though I'm painting a very simple subject in a very simple way, the lessons that you paint in this apple gram at 4 is a 43. So let's talk about painting this apple. Now, the first thing I'm gonna do is do a quick underpainting to get the values. And I'm gonna be keeping my paint very thin here, almost like watercolor, because I want it to dry quickly so I can paint over top of it. And having a lot of paint thinner in my mixture is gonna allow me to do that. So here I'm just worrying about the values. I'm breaking the apple into light and dark. I'm also finding the value for the ground the apple is sitting on and also the background. And I'm making sure my values match up with my reference. So the background is definitely the darkest value, and the shadow side of the apple and the shadow being casted by the apple are the next darkest, and then the lighter side of the apple, and then the ground. Notice how I make the dark side of the apple and the shadow casted by the apple the same value, or very close to the same value. This will come into play later on. And I'm making my paint lighter or darker by using less or more paint thinner. When I want it to be really light, I'll use more thinner. If it's really dark, I'll use less. It's very similar to watercolors at this point. But you can see just doing this quick value sketch underpainting already gives us so much more information. And when you have this, you're gonna feel a lot more comfortable moving on to color, because you're gonna have this underpainting as a guide map to dial in your values correctly. All right, let's move on to color. The first thing I'm going to do is get the shadowed side of the apple, and I'm going to find the average color and average value, and I'm going to do that by squinting my eyes and just grabbing the average color. It's not going to be the darkest value that I see, the darkest color or the lightest color. It's going to be an average of all of them. And again, I get this average by squinting down and painting what I see when I squint down. I do the same thing for the light side. I find the average color and average value by squinting down and painting what I see. Now, finding the average value is going to be helpful because it's going to allow you to push things lighter and push things darker as you see fit later on in the process. And look at that. You could stop right now and people already know that it's an apple. They know it's an apple because you dialed in the right values and you got the right shapes going. Everything after this is just gravy. Now I'm going to jump to the background. It's really important to paint the surroundings of your subject while you're painting the subject and bringing it all up together, because the surroundings are going to influence the subject, especially because this background is the darkest value in the painting. Having it there is going to allow me to compare my other values in the painting to that darkest dark. Also, having the background there is going to allow me to cut back into the apple on the outsides and shape it how I want if I need to. Now remember, this shadow on the ground was very similar to the shadow in the apple. So when I'm mixing up the purple for the shadow, I want to make sure that it's the same value as the apple. Now, a little trick that you can do to make sure you get the right value with your colors is when you put it in, take a picture with your phone and then put that picture in black and white. Getting rid of the color will allow you to gauge the values correctly and make sure things are matching. After that, I lay in a light value for the ground, knowing I'm going to dial that in a little better later on. So this is where you want to get to first. Every piece of canvas is covered with paint. You have something in place for every part of the painting. You're going to use all these parts and compare all of them while you're painting. It's not the brightest highlight, but it's definitely lighter than the previous value we had with gas. From the left, this was another light source on this apple is the reflected light coming from the warm main way, which is causing it to catch different light. Like the left side of the apple that's catching that cool light, it's a plane that's facing a different direction. It's facing that cooler light, opposed to a plane on the right side of the apple, which is facing a different direction and is catching that different warm light source. or the bottom plane of the apple, which is facing down towards the ground and catching that light that's bouncing up at it. Now, don't neglect your surroundings. I noticed in the back sections of the ground that it was actually darker in value than certain parts of the apple, so I darkened it up a little bit. This ground is just another element in the scene, and it's getting hit by light just like the apple is. Different sections are going to be lighter and darker depending on their relationship to the light source. Now, getting back to the concept of reflected light, there's not just light being reflected onto the apple from the ground, but there's also light from the apple being reflected onto the ground. It's very, very subtle, and a lot of times you can't pick it up in a photograph, but when you can see it and you can put it in correctly, it's going to really add to your painting. And boom, there you go, we got an apple. Now, okay, so in this video I'm going to talk about and demonstrate one of the best exercises you can do to get better at portrait painting.
Better if I just want to switch it up.
Is it all as one shape, and this is all just the background. Project another video if you want. At the end you can see I hope you enjoyed this video and makes you want to go out and try this exercise, because I really do think it will help you with your portrait painting. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comments section below. If you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting. All right, so today I'm going to be breaking down the facial features and giving you my, all right, tip for the eyes, which is probably the most helpful, is paint not flat on the face, it's coming out. A lot of times I see people paint nose and they don't put the right shapes or values in the right area. Lining the nostrils, or out. You have the middle plane, which tends to catch the most light, and then you have the outer plane, which angles back in towards the face. Softer and cooler than. All right, and the last tip is that with the opening of the mouth, very, very rarely is it a perfect straight line. A lot of times. Okay, so the 3 steps or phases that I go through to paint, and just seeing the drawing in a way, because I'm still trying to find where things are. Where's the brow bone? Where's the bridge of the nose? Create this. And I was like kind of pushing it around, like, oh, let's spread it over here, let's push it up here. Whereas now I want to think of it as applying, like I'm laying down a sticker, I'm putting down a mark, and I want to leave it no matter how.
Let's start with a quick demonstration of what to avoid when painting a typical beginner mistake. The third problem is that the color of the iris is too strong. Even bright blue eyes don't need to be this blue, and a lot of subtlety on a very, very picture, some lines and some sharpie. If the just the cake, it should only as long as you can. You don't want to go with sharp, detailed lines. Usually think of it as something is lighter than shadows and midtones on the eyeball itself. It's more brown than gray. There also needs to be a thin stripe of shadow just below the lid. This is a very important element to support the channel. Again, a huge thank you to my Patreon members.
Hi everyone, I've got to identify a color because then we can see, and so I like.
Is it watercolor? Yeah.